Cohete's last ride. It's 42 degrees, and we're crossing Minnesota near Alexandria, and we're at a rest stop at, I got the shakes, it's pretty cold.
You heard that right, it's my faithful Iron Steed Cohete's last ride. I'm on my way out to Bismarck, North Dakota in April of 2021 to get my new motorcycle. Cohete was my first motorcycle, and I had it for 42,000 miles over the course of 5 riding seasons in 6 years. We've been through so much together. We've been through hot and cold. The hottest was sitting on the interstate in Gary, Indiana in a parking lot traffic jam in the middle of summer on my way back from Niagara Falls. That's at the end of season 4. Cold would be riding through Yellowstone when it was below freezing in the shade. I left my campsite good and early, and I was blessed with one of Yellowstone's signature treasured landscapes. We've been through dirt and pavement. For dirt, there was a time that I went quite a distance, for miles and miles, on dirt roads to get to a historic campsite that was once occupied by the Lewis and Clark expedition on the Missouri River Breaks of Montana. For road, I once did a 600-mile day for the one and only time. The first day of season 3, where we rode from the Twin Cities all the way to Deadwood, South Dakota, down Highway 212. It's the longest ride I've ever done in one day, to date. There have been some safe and risky places. For safe, I changed Cohete's oil in the garage of a friend's house I was visiting in Pullman, Washington to get ready to dive into Montana's mining country. For risky, I ended up getting lost in Montana's mining country, and I was almost put into a survival situation. Cohete was able to pull me out of there. And I took Cohete to the front line of the George Floyd protests. We've had highs and lows. For highs, we went through the Going to the Sun Road through the Logan Pass in Glacier National Park. The views from above were stunning. It is, with reason, one of America's best highways. For lows, we passed through the Bighorn Basin Desert, an arid depression in northwestern Wyoming surrounded by mountains. It was the first desert I'd ever crossed through by motorcycle, and it's the closest one to my home state, Minnesota. Cohete took me to the Pacific. The goal was just to head west until I hit saltwater. It didn't matter where. It took thousands of miles, and it's the furthest I've ever driven from home. Cohete took me to the Niagara Falls. This was the goal of my Canada trip out east, in the other direction. To the northernmost point in the continental US. This was also a long dirt road excursion that took me across 4 border crossings in one day. The northern Minnesotan September cold and rain made it exceptionally difficult, but we were able to make it. It took me to Canada for the first, second, and third times, and the only times I've ever been to our northerly neighbor. Cohete held out and brought me through Bureau of Land Management land in Montana when I was low on fuel. I was completely alone near no towns or farms for hours, and we still pulled through together. I found out the limits of the Vulcan, while also learning a valuable lesson in long-distance motorcycle riding. I've only tipped Cohete over a handful of times, and that's the worst damage it's ever experienced.
I'm okay. Oh no. I'm okay. Thank you. That's embarrassing.
I have never been so attached to an inanimate object. To send Cohete off right, it turned out that the last ride we'd have was a good 300-mile trek out to Bismarck, the capital of North Dakota. Crossing the Dakotas, as always, is a physical challenge for a biker. Depending on the weather, every 100 miles in the Dakotas can wear you down like 200 miles someplace else. Fighting the elements is much harder here because it's so flat with no elevation changes or trees to block the gusts of wind of the Great Plains. A lot of the exits here on the interstate don't lead anywhere, They're just branches of the nervous system that is the grid of roads from farms in the region to the main highway. It takes patience. Finally, we arrive in Bismarck.
Hey there everybody, thank you for watching Two Wheels, One Compass. My name is Jimmy. It's been a while since I've given you guys an update. I think what you've typically been hearing from me is a regular release of video, probably once a month, and that's been about it, so I figure I should probably give you a little checkup. Right now I'm in the process of working on season 4. I'm already a couple episodes in and uploaded. It's just going to be a regular cadence, kind of like season 3 in terms of releases. I ended up doing like a huge, aggressive, yet kind of necessary data file purge, so any kind of changes that I could make to anything that's already been released can't happen, and there's a couple more episodes left of season 3 and then it's all over. The trip itself was in 2016. It is now 2021. 2020 was a crazy year for myself, and everybody else I'm sure can agree watching this video. The pandemic, crazy elections, and I live in the Twin Cities, and there was quite a bit of civil unrest. I ended up taking quite a bit of video of that.
There's a curfew at 8 o'clock here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. The National Guard is here, Lake Street, to see how far east you can go from uptown, and this is about it. Not sure about the other side, but the target is over there that's completely raised.
I'm not really sure if I'm going to end up doing a video on that or not, just because there's so much that I still want to do. It would be really relevant, it would be a really good thing to do, but where I am right now is actually, I am in North Dakota. I'm in the city of Mandan, which is across the Missouri River in North Dakota. What am I doing here? I've now purchased what is probably the biggest purchase in my lifetime, except for maybe my college education, a Honda Africa Twin. This thing is insane. It's an 1100, it's a 2020, brand new bike. I haven't even, I came out to Mandan to get it. I couldn't find this bike in Minnesota, any neighboring states around it except for here, nor any other neighboring states around these. Apparently the open road Honda in Mandan here is a power dealer, I think based off of their, they probably have like a lot of sales because of the oil fields that are nearby. So because they're a power dealer, they get first dibs on all the orders. So they had 3 Honda Africa Twins, and I picked the one that worked best for me. It's official. I have it. This is going to be amazing. I do plan on taking a lot more video and releasing a lot more content. It just takes time to edit, like a lot of time. And also on my way back, I'm going to be going to something that I've wanted to do for a long time. There's nothing really on the way to get to this place, but it's something that's really important to me, and I'm really happy that I'm able to see it. So here is
The journey to
the burial site of Sitting Bull.
Ready?
Yeah.
I'm here in the city of Mandan, technically, along the Missouri River. Instead of taking I-94, which we took on the way here, my dad and I will be taking a long route south to the resting place of one of the most famous Native Americans in history, the Lakota war chief, Sitting Bull. Among my many videos in Season 3, Sitting Bull has had his own episodes and even a few guest appearances. His resting place resides in the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation overlooking the Missouri River, across from the city of Mobridge, South Dakota. Aside from the reservation being the epicenter of the fight over the Keystone XL pipeline, there's not really much around here. Most of the tourism in South Dakota is along the I-90 corridor to the south and in the Black Hills and Badlands to the southwest. It's hard to come by here on the way to anything, so we decided to take the long way home along US 12 back to the Twin Cities. Before that, the next day, we take Highway 1804 down the east side of the Missouri.
Very windy, you probably won't hear this very well, but Highway 1804 is no coincidence. It's the year that Lewis and Clark came through here. I'm at the border of North and South Dakota here, along the Missouri River, and we're on our way to Sitting Bull's grave, which is near the town of Mobridge. Oh, I gotta say that the Midwest ends at the Missouri River. I think the West begins as soon as you get west of the Missouri River, because the West is a geography and why put a political border to it? I think the Missouri River is that perfect border. Landscape changes and the scenery, everything. This is a great highway. I'm actually loving this. This is a great first run with the new bike.
Early on in Season 3, I did 2 episodes on Sitting Bull when I was on that 600-mile trek across South Dakota. They're also very early on in my editing abilities, and they're a lot more primitive, but I like keeping them up to show how far my skills have come. I may not be the best video editor in the world, but for an independent artist, I feel like I'm doing alright. The first video goes into how Sitting Bull was known as a man of action. He was a renegade, a revolutionary, an underdog, a spiritual and military leader. He united the Plains tribes in a way they hadn't been united before. After the Dakota War, which is what the entirety of Season 2 is on this channel, the US military pushed into today's North Dakota to push the natives back. Henry Sibley actually ran into Sitting Bull at the Battle of Dead Buffalo Lake. I covered this battle and a few others in episodes 72 and 73 in Season 3 in North Dakota. He later used creative rush and skirmish tactics that forced Sibley to turn back to Minnesota. During the Great Sioux War, which was episode 3 of Season 3, Sitting Bull made his national debut in the Battle of Little Bighorn. The US suffered a crushing defeat, and Sitting Bull's name spread like wildfire across the US. Sitting Bull, the Indian who killed Custer. This also happened during the United States' 100th birthday, which really ruined the party. Sitting Bull then escaped across the Canadian border, or what natives called the Medicine Line. Way over in Idaho, Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce tribe refused to have his people forced onto a reservation and took up arms. He fought his way across Montana and Wyoming in a series of impressive tactical retreats with the hopes of uniting forces with Sitting Bull. When the Crow Reservation left his people out in the cold for fear of US retaliation, they made a dash for the border with the goal of joining forces with the Lakota war chief. A snowstorm slowed them at an extremely crucial time, and the US forces caught up to them. They surrendered just a few short miles from the border. Later in life, after the US had allowed Sitting Bull to return, he had become a man of peace. He knew that the United States was too powerful and the white population too numerous to take on in battle as he'd been doing before. He toured the US as a part of traveling performers and hobnobbed with the famous people of the day. He still fought for Native American rights and sovereignty, but diplomatically. He was killed in a skirmish with US officers on his property in 1890. His body was buried nearby, but a little over 60 years later in 1953, it was moved to his birthplace near Mobridge, South Dakota, where he remains today. The monument itself is very simple and comes with an obelisk dedicated to the Shoshone explorer Sacagawea, the woman who assisted in the Lewis and Clark expedition. I talked a bit about her and the expedition back in episode 60 of Season 3. If you're expecting a big statue of Sitting Bull, tickets at the front gate, tours, and guides, you're going to find yourself way off. I'd like to think that this is what Sitting Bull would have appreciated. The site of his resting place isn't commercialized. Aside from a few street signs and plaques, this is about it. A bust on a pillar overlooking the Missouri River and Mobridge. I'd like to believe it's something of a destination for pilgrims or a holy site. I don't think I've visited the grave of a famous person, much less a historical figure. I wonder if Sitting Bull would have been happy with his resting place. I wonder what he'd think about the state of Native Americans today. He was great for his time and place in the Manifest Destiny era, but would he be an effective leader today? I'd like to think he'd be proud about being a Native American symbol of unity today, but it's all impossible to know. As for me, this is where I'll wrap things up. The rest of the ride home was a due east break for the Twin Cities. I'll have another video on all my equipment, the new bike, and the greater plan that's coming soon. So for now, I hope you're enjoying the channel, and there'll be plenty more videos of Cohete to release, so don't worry. Stay tuned for those and much more on 2 Wheels, 1 Compass.